Hi there, I'm Carax and welcome to Mission 4. I'm going to go over two things briefly and then we can get started. After the Mission 3 video came out, we found a strat that can save up to 24 seconds. Basically, you can throw a smoke bomb at Waits at the beginning of Mission 10, which causes him to get out of his chair and open the room with the flamethrower immediately. There are pros and cons to this strat, which I'll cover another time. He can actually soft lock, in which case you have to reload save and try again. But if you want to be able to use this new strat in Mission 10, you should now be grabbing the smoke bomb blueprint in Mission 3. You absolutely don't have to do this strat if you don't want to, but it's worth mentioning. Okay, so let's get started with Mission 4. Just like I mentioned in the Mission 2 video, you want to start moving when the loading icon disappears so that you're already running in the screen fade in. This means that you have to be thinking about this ahead of time as you're loading into Mission 4 from Mission 3. None of the androids are hostile at the start, so you can just run through them and go straight to the tracker room. There's a box to the left of the tracker. I'd recommend beginners and intermediates to loot this because you're improving your chances of getting an explosive for Mission 7, and it's a very minor time loss.
È stato modificato.
Once you pick up the tracker, the game will lock your camera forward, then ask you to press your tracker key, whatever it's bound to, which will pull it out and break the camera lock. Do not spam or mash your tracker key, or sometimes the camera lock will remain in place and you'll be unable to move, and then the only fix is to load current save. You want to hold S and D as you pull out the tracker, then spin to your right, picking up the two loot spots on the table as you do so. Then go into the PC. Once the PC has loaded, hit up and then use to unlock the door directly ahead of you. Now, after you come out of the PC, the game will actually wrest control of your camera again. What you can do if you want to save a tiny bit of time is actually pull out your revolver so that you can pick up the final piece of loot to the right of the PC before continuing on. There's also a box underneath the PC that you can loot if you want to. Once you're off the PC and have picked up the items you want, head past the Jump Scare Joe and all the way up the stairs. When you get to the top, bear right and then head all the way to the end to the blue hat. There are also two conveyor belts that you can activate on the way in if you really want as you run past, but you'll have time to loot both of these in Mission 15, so most runners tend to skip these. Okay, so blue hacks, 3 quick things to note. The first is that it's probably easiest to input your blue hacks with mouse wheel rather than using E. I just find the timing works out slightly easier. Of course, it's down to personal preference. Secondly, there's a bit of input delay before you can enter each individual line. So you see in this particular hack on row 2 and 3, the white bars that I have to hit are super far to the left. And these are actually impossible. I'm hitting the first symbol, rolling my mouse wheel instantly, but it doesn't go through, and therefore it jumps up one line. So you'll have to wait for the white sider to bounce back from the right hand side before you can do the hack. Third and final point is that just like green hacks, you can roll your mouse wheel to drop the hack tool faster. However, in green hacks you can wait till the screen turns green. Blue hacks you'll just have to get a feel for the timing. Once the door opens, run straight ahead and towards the vent. There's also a box on the left that you should loot. Most people either crouch at the vent then turn left, or strafe run left and then crouch after looting the box. Follow the vent around to the left and you'll be led into the Mr. Hughes death cutscene. This is where all the androids in the level become hostile with the red eyes. And speaking of hostile androids, I think this is the right time to talk about stun mechanics. There's two main strats of getting past androids. The first is the grab cancel. This is pretty simple. You shoot just as the android goes to grab you. You can see his arms coming up in this clip. This also has the added bonus of giving you 10 seconds of grab immunity, which also happens when you're grabbed for real. The immunity from the grab cancel comes in useful when you're in areas with multiple Joes. The second mechanic is the stagger. When you shoot a Joe from a little bit further back, he staggers either backwards or forwards, and you can also pass him. However, crucially, this does not give you grab immunity. Be wary of firing at anything from too far away though. The AR revolver is notoriously unreliable at mid to long range. An important thing to know is that wrenching a droid kills your grab immunity if you have it. Do you see in this clip, I successfully cancel the grab, you see the Joe's arms go up. And now, because Ripley has that immunity I just spoke about, I cannot be grabbed by any droid for 10 seconds. However, if I start spamming left click and swinging the jack, the protection breaks and the android starts chain grabbing me. Now, I appreciate grab cancelling might be a little scary when you're a beginner, so I've come up with a little drill that should really help you out. All you have to do is load up the beginning of Mission 4 and run to the first Joe. Left click once to wrench him, this will make him aggressive, then run past him till you're level with the corner of this box that's lying on the ground. As soon as you hit the corner of the box, turn around, run back, and fire your first shot. Then continue running past the Joe again, exactly back the way you just came, until you hit the side of this box over here. And basically you can just rinse and repeat this running between the two boxes. The spacing means that the 10 seconds of grab immunity always expires by the time you get to the Joe. Okay, so Hughes and the android will go back and forth before the android finally kills him. This takes about 40 seconds. When you get control back, continue straight on through the vents and immediately run to the right to cool the elevator. Now you have a couple options here depending on whether the camera trips or not. The camera not tripping is the most chill scenario. What you want to do is immediately 180 after you've hit the button and run into the room. There's a box here and an item of loot here. On either your way in or your way out, you should also loot Hughes' body. The timing should work out nicely so that you're back in time to hit the elevator prompt. If you trip the camera, then the androids will start walking towards you. Now, fun fact, they'll never reach you if you're by the elevator, so you could just loot Hughes only and run back and wait. That is technically an option, but what I recommend you do instead is run and pick up the single item of loot here, then immediately spin around, and there's actually a second item of loot next to this PC. Then on the way you can still loot Hughes. This still gets you back to the elevator in time if done properly. You do get a little close to the android, but as long as you don't delay and your movement is decent, there's zero risk of getting grabbed here. Finally, if you're feeling extra spicy, you can just run straight for the box like in the original example, but you'll have to throw in a grab cancel or a couple of staggers. Once you hit the button, you have some downtime. Now is an important window to pull up your radial menu and start looking at what you can commit to blueprints. Bear in mind what I talked about at the start of the Mission 3 video. The priority item right now is still that explosive for Mission 7. Like I said before, you'll learn the recipes after a couple of runs, so it gets easier. The game actually tries to trick you here into doing the upstairs objective, but it's completely optional, so we're going straight ahead through the androids to get to the Samuels cutscene. As soon as the doors open, you want to be running, so that the Joes don't patrol to spots that are in your way. This is one of those missions where the quicker you go, the safer you actually are. As I run past the second android, I'm actually looking at this item on the right. We're about to run back exactly the way we came, and usually if the item is a flare or something I'm missing that builds into the pipe or the molly for Mission 7, I pick it up on the way back. Alright, so you can see I'm just running straight through here, head for the white door, and just before the second door, you'll see the Flashbang V1 blueprint. Flashbangs are very useful in NMG. Their biggest value in Novice comes from the fact that they make a very loud noise, and they can be thrown to make that noise from far away and bring Steve down at that location. Dropping a flare or flares and then throwing something that makes noise, like a flash, towards those flares to lock down Steve is very, very useful in Mission 10. So the earlier you pick up the blueprint, the sooner you can start putting items into it. If you're not making the smoke bomb for the weight strat, then the flashbang is your second priority item after the M7 explosive. There is the flashbang V2 blueprint in Mission 8, so don't worry if you forget this blueprint, but for beginners and intermediates especially, it's good to pick up the blueprint now rather than later. Because in this guide, I'm directing you to kind of excess loot spots. I want you to get the items you need a high percentage of the time. As a result, you're just in a stronger position if you pick up this blueprint now. By the way, you'll notice here I run to trigger the door, and then as the door opens, I twist my camera to loot the blueprint. This is slightly faster. After the door, run up the small set of stairs and into the room. You can actually just hit the prompt from the opposite side here and immediately 180 on yourself and run back the way you came. As soon as you hit the prompt, your screen will fade to black for the cutscene. Just skip it and continue through the doors. By the way, I know some people prefer grabbing the flashbang blueprint now. It's slightly slower, but do what feels comfortable. Okay, first bit that looks mildly scary, but it's actually completely safe on Novice. You can head right as soon as you're through the second door and actually run past this Joe. He never grabs you unless you get stuck on something or misplay. This should be pretty simple to execute, but if you'd like a safer strat, you can of course head left instead and route this way. It's just a little slower. Sometimes there can be an android in your way in this same corridor. It's just RNG. If he is, then shoot him or run around him. After I pass the doorway here, this is usually when I decide if that item on the way in was worth picking up. I pick it up now if I want to. Then I run towards the exit, shoot the Joe, and hit the elevator button. You'll notice, by the way, that I turn my flashlight on and start spamming the crouch button while sprinting here. We call this psychohopping. So not like crouch hopping that we discussed in Mission 2, where we're trying to be stealthy, this is the opposite. It makes a bunch of extra noise to try and pull the android out of the elevator sooner. Now, if the Joe comes out of the elevator slowly, which can happen sometimes, you can choose to either A, slow down and wait for him to come out of the elevator a little bit before stunning him, or B, simply get in with him. Once you've done that, you can just shoot him and loot his body. or just let him grab you, and then you'll have the 10 seconds of immunity that I spoke about earlier.
It's really rare to happen. Ow. Ow.
By the way, there's a very rare glitch where the elevator is closed. The fix is to run to the save station and save reload. When you load back in, the elevator will be open. Alright, once you're back in the elevator, it takes about 10 seconds to open. It opens on the side where Hughes died. Typically, this is where most people first think about reloading the revolver, so now I'm going to talk briefly about the revolver mechanics I left out in the Mission 3 video. First of all, it takes 3 headshots to kill a regular Joe on Novice, and 4 headshots to kill a Super Joe. Secondly, whenever you fire a shot and hit reload, Ripley will empty the revolver before she loads it again. This is probably something the devs threw in intentionally to put more pressure on the player, but it's also super annoying in speedruns. There are 2 solutions to the revolver problem. 1, you can wait till you pass through a loading screen and then reload your gun. You can test it for yourself in this mission actually, as you'll go through a loading screen before you take the tram at the end. The second fix works just like the flare mechanics I taught you at the beginning of Mission 3. Just like that flare, you can cancel the empty animation by either swinging the wrench or peeking. As soon as the elevator doors open, run back the way you came and down the stairs. As you enter the stairwell, Steve is actually moving to try and trap in the vents ahead of you downstairs. Trapping is where Steve wants to jump scare kill you in a vent. You'll see him drooling. The 2 vents he traps in are this one downstairs before the first android, and this one here in the big room. So with this in mind, once you round the corner downstairs, you want to bear right and run past the Joe into the room. It is possible to pass under the vent before Steve gets there by grab cancelling the Joe, but if you mess it up, there's a chance that the android will grab or throw you into a kill animation. And though unlikely, this is such a dumb way to lose a run, but it's just better to run into the room in my opinion. It's roughly a 2-second time loss, so for beginners especially, I think it's very worth it. Now this is the Joe you actually need to pay attention to. He has RNG with his positioning. Here I get this nice position where I can just run into the room, but sometimes he will be close enough to grab you. If in doubt, just shoot him. Remember, Steve is moving again to try and kill you from this vent, but all vents afterwards are safe, so just continue on. There is a third android, but he shouldn't be close enough to grab you unless you're slowing down a lot, so you're good to run all the way to the end and call the final elevator. Congrats, the hard part's over, well done. One final important detail though, when you load into this new area, Steve is actually traveling towards you, passing overhead. So stop running when you hear a beep on your tracker. Whenever you hear a beep on the tracker, it means something has entered its range. So if you don't stop running, Steve will drop behind you eventually. The tram at the end of this mission is triggered as soon as you load in. So while you're waiting for Steve to go away, you can loot both the chests of drawers. After you've done that, make sure you pull out your tracker to check that Steve has disappeared. Once there's nothing on your tracker, and only once there's nothing, you can run. Head all the way down the stairs and it's the first tram on your right. Simply board the tram when the doors open, hit the prompt, and you'll fade out to end the mission. So that should be everything. I hope you found it useful. As always, please do comment down in the comment section if you have any questions, and I will see you in the next one.